How I Met Your Mother is back with a gender bend. Hilary Duff stars in How I Met Your Father. It's on Hulu, and it's one of 6 new shows we're going to talk about this week, including Single Drunk Female and Archive 81 over on Netflix. And of course, we've got some news for you as well. Let's talk TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It and TV news and reviews for the week. Welcome to the show. We're going to tackle 6 new programs. How I Met Your Father over on Hulu, starring Hilary Duff and Kim Cattrall. Of course, she's not in the new Sex and the City reboot, but she's in this reboot. Single Drunk Female over on Freeform, we're going to get to as well. Netflix's Archive 81, As We See It on Amazon Prime. Women of the Movement, which is already wrapped on ABC, but you can catch up with that miniseries on Hulu. And then we've got a new kids show for you as well on Nickelodeon called Warped. We're going to talk about all of that coming up. But first, of course, we got to get into the news. If you are new to Dan Reviews It, by the way, thank you for joining with this video. We do TV news and reviews every week here. Please consider subscribing down below. Would love to have you as one of my subscribers. Let's get right into this. Just one thing to talk about in renewals and cancellations, and that is The Righteous Gemstones on HBO. I've not seen this show. I'm not a huge Danny McBride fan, so I just never really caught on with it. But it's about to finish season 2 in just a few weeks. February 27th is going to be the finale of that. But obviously HBO is enjoying their returns on that, so they have renewed that for season 3 already. All right, so we move on to casting news. We've got a few things to talk about. So the Mighty Ducks, we mentioned a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago maybe now, that Emilio Estevez is out as the male lead of the Mighty Ducks on Disney+. Game Changers is the subtitle of the show. But they have found their new male lead in Josh Duhamel. He's going to portray, not the same character, he's going to portray Gavin Cole, who is an NHL player turned coach. And he is described as inspirational, charming, and hardcore, as he is big on the hockey metaphor that applies to life. And he is in charge of the Summer Hockey Institute, where the Mighty Ducks are going to be in season 2. So we'll look forward to that. Lauren Graham, of course, returning, and Brady Noon returning as the main kid in the Mighty Ducks. And that assumingly will be out later this year, probably. Now that they've found him, they're probably going to film in the spring, I would think. Jennifer Garner and James Marsden are joining Star's Party Down revival. Most of the original cast is featured here. We talked about this a few weeks ago as well. Lizzie Kaplan is going to be out, and we'll get to her new show in a second too. But everybody else from that original cast, Jane Lynch, Adam Scott, trying to think of everybody that was involved with that. Megan Mullally. They will be joined by Jennifer Garner and James Marsden. Two pretty big names. So I'm intrigued about that. I guess I should do a binge of the original Party Down, because I think it's only like 20 episodes or something, and they're half hours. So I should take a couple of days one week and just go through those before season 3 starts, because I love all the people involved in it. I've always kind of wanted to watch it, but it was one of those that fell through the cracks. So we'll see about that. And then speaking of Lizzie Kaplan, so her new show is called Fleischman in Trouble. We've talked about this a couple of times as well, and we already knew that she was going to star alongside Jesse Eisenberg, and the show is about a marriage gone wrong. But we have a couple new names to that cast as well, big ones too. Claire Danes is going to play Rachel, who is the ex-wife of Eisenberg's Toby, and then Adam Brody has been brought on from the OC. He's going to be one of Toby's old friends. So that is shaping up to be a pretty stacked cast as well. It's based on a novel. I forget what network is going to have that. I think it's going to be FX on Hulu. So I'm pretty sure that's correct. But yeah, so some big names there. Speaking of Hulu, they have given a series order to a show called Reboot, which is another star-studded affair. It's a comedy from Modern Family co-creator Steve Levitan, and this is his follow-up, really, since Modern Family went off the air. It stars Keegan-Michael Key and Johnny Knoxville, Judy Greer as well. She's a pretty big name. And they are the two, Keegan-Michael Key and Johnny Knoxville play the two male leads of an early 2000s family sitcom that Hulu decides to reboot. So that's sort of the theme. And now they've got to deal with their unresolved issues in today's world, which I'm sure a lot of the reboots deal with, like, okay, well, how can we make our show more palatable for today's audiences. And so I could see this being funny. And I like Steve Levitan. I mean, he the first time I remember seeing his name is on Just Shoot Me. I think he created that, which I thought was a funny show. So definitely I'll give that a try. Speaking of Hulu and FX on Hulu, by the way. So FX has completed its annual count of English language scripted shows. They do this every year, and they just basically look at every single show on the air, and if it is scripted, if it's in the English language primarily, it counts for this survey. And they just go year to year to say, okay, well, this is how many shows are currently airing. So 2021 reached new heights. There are 559 shows on the air, both broadcast and streaming, cable, of course, as well, up from 496 in 2020. Of course, that was, a lot of COVID stuff. And even the year before that, though, the year before COVID, 2019, there were only 532 shows. And this does not even include children's language shows, like Sesame Street, PBS kind of stuff. It doesn't include unscripted, and it doesn't include foreign shows like Squid Game wouldn't be on the list. So that is a lot of TV. Now that counts all shows, new and old. When I did my year-end wrap-up, I had counted that I reviewed 287 different shows last year, so almost 300. Now, I do include some children's shows every so often. I include some unscripted or reality shows or game shows sometimes. So, you can toss out probably 30 or 40 of those. But that's only the brand new shows that I was tackling. That doesn't count all of the shows that have been on for years that I did not really watch last year. All the, the Chicago shows and all the different doctor shows and all of that. So yeah, that's pretty wild that there are 559 scripted English language shows available at any time between streaming, cable, and broadcast. It's just nuts. All right, so that's just sort of an odd and end, but I saw that statistic and I was like, this is kind of insane. And that's kind of why I started doing this show, by the way, so I could expose myself to shows that maybe I wouldn't know about otherwise, because there's just so much that gets lost in the sauce. And I actually, my year-end countdown from a couple of weeks ago, one of my dear friends, Beth, was going over that and sort of, watching the ones she had never heard of. And we've been talking about some of the really good ones that she's discovered through that. So, I mean, that's kind of the reason I did this. So I could really see kind of the best of the best, even if they're shows that aren't being talked about. So I love that idea. All right. Monarch, the big linchpin in Fox's mid-season schedule, is moving to the fall. They've decided it would work better there. They have not had any COVID stoppages, but with 3 or 4 episodes in the can already, they didn't want to have to stop if they were shut down from COVID and then go on hiatus for a month or something. So they decided to basically shoot the entire season's worth of shows before the season even begins, which, in today's world does make sense. This is the Susan Sarandon, Trace Adkins country drama show. I'm thinking along the lines of a Nashville, ABC's old show, and sort of a mix between that and maybe Empire on Fox. Fox does do very well with these music dramas, so could see that one being big. But yeah, that's going to be moving to the fall now. And then the last thing in news for you is one reboot, and it's from a movie to a show, but we talk about those as well. Percy Jackson is coming to Disney Plus. Of course, this is really book to show, and they specifically stated that the show version of Percy Jackson will go a lot closer to what the book was like than the movies. The movies aged up the characters a bit and apparently had some other changes. I didn't read the books. I did see both of the movies. I thought they were perfectly fine, in that kind of B to B minus range, I guess, for me. But look, at the end of the day, Disney Plus, obviously, unless it's like a Marvel show, does tend to skew a bit younger, so it makes sense they would leave the characters the age they are in the novels. But yeah, Percy Jackson fans, you can rejoice that they're going to make a TV show that is pretty close to the books, apparently. So, all right, that's it with news. Let's move into the reviews. Like I said, we've got 6 of them, and we got to start with this How I Met Your Father. This is certainly the biggest show of the week, I think, that we're reviewing. And it debuted on January 18th, so there's, I think, 4 of them up now, because Hulu put 2 up the first week and then 1 each additional week. But like I mentioned up top, it stars Hilary Duff, but the cast of characters around her. I'm not really too familiar with Christopher Lowell, Francia Raisa, Suraj Sharma. I do know them, I think. Kim Cattrall does the Bob Saget type voiceover role here, except they've twisted it a little bit because instead of us looking at the children and just hearing Bob Saget's voice, like in the original show, we see Kim Cattrall and we don't see the child that she's talking to. But her portion takes place in 2050, I think it is, sort of looking back on her life with these kids. So, look, How I Met Your Mother was a huge show, and the original creators are counted here as executive producers, Carter Bays and Craig Thomas. But other than that, I don't really think they have anything to do with this version because it's listed as created by Isaac Apatow and Elizabeth Berger. So, these are people that I don't think had anything to do with the original. But this is a show that I've been talking about for almost the whole time I feel like I've been doing TV news and reviews, since late 2019, because this has been in the works in many different facets for a long time. They've tried several different attempts at a spinoff, and at one point it was going to be called How I Met Your Dad, and it was not with Hilary Duff. I forget who they had. But, Hilary Duff, this is a good time for her because she's coming off of a big hit in the show Younger, and as well the show with her on Disney Plus, the Lizzie McGuire reboot, fell through because she wanted to have a slightly more adult version, not getting into the typical Disney shenanigans in her 30s, and they said, no, we're good, we don't really want that, so it freed her up to do this. So I am a fan of the original show. I think it's safe to say that the last season was pretty poor. The last episode specifically was very poor. But I think overall, I can say that I was a fan of that show. I watched those first couple seasons. I've probably seen a few times. And when it went into syndicated reruns, I would catch an episode here or there. But I have seen the full series, enjoyed it. But I would say I don't love it like a lot of people do. So I can sort of distance myself a little bit from, okay, how does this fare compared to the original? I think it's unfair to really compare it to the original because it's not that similar. They're really trying to make it similar, but it's not. The chemistry's not there, for one thing. I like Hilary Duff, but the chemistry with these lead characters, it's just not there. And look, I didn't know a lot of the How I Met Your Mother cast at first. I had seen Jason Segel, of course, in Freaks and Geeks, but this was kind of before his movie career took off. Neil Patrick Harris, of course, everybody knew he was sort of the star at the time. And then Allison Hannigan, I did know from, Buffy and American Pie. But that chemistry with those characters and that cast was just magnificent. And you need that in an ensemble show. I don't think this show has it. And you could say, well, maybe give it some time. Maybe they will. Okay. But the original had it immediately. And also that was back in the day when you're doing 22 to 24 episodes a season. Here, we've only got 10 episodes for these characters to really click. And after 2 episodes, I don't think they've done it. So don't really love that. That's number one. Number two, I don't really like the change up with the Kim Cattrall version of the Bob Saget character. I don't care about the gender part, but I think her doing her sort of sexy shtick as the adult Hilary Duff, or the older Hilary Duff, let's say, I don't think it quite worked. The charm of the Bob Saget routine with the kids was very, very minimal. Here Kim Cattrall is doing bits and drinking wine, and it just, to me, it detracted from the main focus of the show, which should be the Hilary Duff character along with her friends. Now that being said, I did get a few laughs from this. I don't really hate any of the characters. Although I will say it did remind me just how white the original show was. All those main characters were white, and here, of course, as we do now, you've got the whole rainbow. And that's fine, of course. Speaking of rainbows, yes, there's a gay character as well. The original didn't have that, although it had Neil Patrick Harris playing a straight character. But it's just, this is a watered down version of the original. It is, it's sad to have to compare it, but you kind of do, because the original is so beloved. And even me, like I said, I would say casual fan of the original, realizes that this is a pretty good step down. I think it actually might even be worse without the original, because I think people could watch it and be like, well, I don't care about any of this. But here they at least put it in the same world, the same universe, because at the end of that first episode, they don't mention the characters by name, but they talk about Marshall and Lily's apartment, because some of the characters live there now. And so that's sort of the thread that binds these two shows together. So I think people will actually give it more of a chance because of that than they would have otherwise. For me, it was just merely okay. I give How I Met Your Father a C. Up next, we're going to go to Freeform and Single Drunk Female, which is not unlike How I Met Your Father in the sense that it is a young 30-something gal. She could be late 20s, I don't know. But navigating her life of romance. In this particular case, though, she is fresh out of rehab. And I actually saw a ton of previews for this because when I was on vacation in Florida, the hotel had cable. I don't have cable myself, so I don't see a lot of like ads for upcoming shows unless they plaster them like on Hulu or something. But there were a couple movies that we were watching on Freeform when I was down there, and every commercial break they had an ad for this show coming up. So it looked intriguing at that point, and so I was glad to see that it did not necessarily disappoint when I watched it here. So we've got Sophia Black-Diella as the lead, Samantha Fink, who is, like I said, fresh out of rehab, forced to move back home after her rock bottom and trying to navigate her life. And we've got Ali Sheedy from the old Brat Pack as her mother. So, we love that. Love seeing her again. Freeform is all about sort of the old Brat Pack characters, because when it was ABC Family, they had the Secret Life of the Teenager, and it was Molly Ringwald as the mom. So here we have Ali Sheedy. And I think this show takes an interesting topic because we've seen a lot of shows about recovering alcoholics. A couple of the most famous ones I can think of, Ted Danson's character on Cheers. He owned a bar, but he's a recovering alcoholic. They didn't dwell too much on that in the later years, but, hit it sporadically. And, of course, the big one is Mom. That's about alcohol and drug addiction. But everybody was already in rehab when Mom started. Same thing with Cheers. Ted Danson's character was already, in recovery for years, I think, by the time that show started. Here we've got somebody fresh out of rehab. And it is a concept that they've been doing recently on The Connors. The Becky character went to rehab for a season. So, okay. It's not completely uncharted territory, but that's, The Connors is a much more broad comedy than this. This is sort of a comedic drama for sure. But it tackles a lot of issues of today of like, okay, well, how do you get a job after rehab? And, how do you navigate love life after rehab? Everybody kind of knows, I got fired from my last job because I was drunk all the time and da-da-da-da-da. So she's sort of navigating that life while trying to be independent of her mother, and that is tough. It reminded me a little bit of this show called Back to Life that aired on Showtime in 2019. I did review that very favorably. In her case, she was in jail, not rehab, but still, a similar concept of, when you get out of something that is, for the better for you, what is your life like? And I think the scripts here are really focusing on those moments and some of the things that maybe people that have not ever dealt with this or don't know people that have dealt with this, they don't think about. And so I appreciate that. And this gal, Sophia Black-Diella, or D'Elia, I don't know if I know her from anything. Let's see what she's been in here. She was the oldest daughter on The Mick. Oh, I love that show with Caitlin Olsen from Always Sunny. And she's been, that horrible movie Project Almanac she was in. All right, so she's done a few things. But she was in Gossip Girl, which I've never seen. That might be her highest profile role. I didn't watch that show. But, all right, so you may know her a little bit more than I do if you're a fan of some of that work. But I thought she really does a good job here as this lead character with the navigation. I think a lot of these shows that sort of focus in on one thing, I like shows like this where it doesn't make that person's entire, thing that which, her character is defined by. Oh, she's not just the girl out from rehab. There are more layers to her than that, and we discover that as the weeks go on. And I really like that sort of conceit. But I think they do it well here. So I leave Single Drunk Female with an A minus. Next, we're going to go to Netflix, Archive 81. This is getting a lot of buzz. It's still in their top 10 after about 3 weeks of release. And this is an interesting one. I don't know if it's from a book or something, but it's listed as a mystery horror series, and I could totally see that. It's also not listed as a mini-series, which means we could get a second season of this, I guess, in theory. But, here we go. It's based on a podcast. Well, we've seen that a few times before now, but basically the podcast was about researchers cataloging the video archive of a missing filmmaker. And so this show takes the lead character, Dan, played by Mamadou Athie, and puts him basically, he's like this film archivist, and he gets hired by this kind of shady corporation. Martin Donovan plays his boss, and they send him to this like very remote place, really nice house, but there's no cell reception. They have a landline, but no cell reception, and they're kind of monitoring your every move. I'm not sure if he knows that or not, but they certainly are. And he is looking through these tapes of this filmmaker who vanished, and what do her tapes have to say about that issue, and all that stuff. It's kind of interesting in the regard of for me being massively into sort of old production equipment and stuff like that from back in my radio days, so this guy's working with a lot of old VHS tapes and reels and stuff like that. So I like that part of it for sure, just as sort of an observer. But the story itself, I think, definitely lends itself to some intrigue. I do wonder if it maybe would have been better served as a film instead of a series. Let me see how many episodes there are. I made it through 2 of them. I always try to watch 2 episodes for you guys. So there's 8 episodes total. And like I said, this is just listed as a series, not a miniseries. So this could, return for a second season. Or if they do return for a second season, it may be like an anthology, like with an all-new cast, but looking for a different filmmaker or something. I'm not sure. But a lot of different ways they can go with it. But this lead actor, I think here again, very good. I believe, his story. We find out a lot about his backstory just in the first episode about things in his past that may lead him to this project that I won't really go over here. But I don't think I've really seen him in anything that big. He was in the movie The Circle. I saw that horrible Tom Hanks movie. So, okay, he was in that. But, I don't really recognize him, but I thought he did a really good job here. His buddy, too, is played by Matt McGorry from, I feel like maybe he was on Scandal or something, but he's sort of the guy, in our shoes saying, like, dude, what are you doing there? Like, is it scary? What's going on? By the end of the first episode, we certainly are drawn into this world a little bit, some scares, and I'm definitely intrigued to see where this is going. Now, I will say I'm part of a few different like TV and movie groups on Facebook, and they don't do spoilers, but I did see somebody post that the ending of this series was terrible and basically ruined it. And I saw in the comments a couple of people had echoed that sentiment. So, I always say that shows like this that are based on a mystery that we're untangling or something like that, like Mayor of Easttown, all sort of live and die by how it ends. That can drop something like this an entire letter grade or more if it makes the viewer feel like they wasted their entire time watching it. So, I'm not going to obviously grade it, from that comment because I don't know, but like I said with Mayor of Easttown, when I originally reviewed that, like it could go up or down, fluctuate, depending on how the ending was. Now, luckily, Mayor of Easttown had an amazing ending. This one, I don't know. I'm only 2 episodes into the 8. So, but for now, I do think the concept is intriguing. I like this lead dude, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. I'm hooked into the mystery. I leave Archive 81 for now with a B+. And that can certainly go up to WandaVision. I originally gave a B plus, and that ended with an A after I watched all of that. So, all right, next we're going to go to Amazon Prime. As We See It is the name of the show, and this is about three roommates on the autism spectrum trying to find a way to live together and as well strive for some independence and try and live a quote unquote normal life. What is normal, really? Let's be serious. But they're all in their like early to mid 20s, sort of wanting different things from life, and also sort of having different issues on the spectrum. And the lead three, Rick Glassman, Sue Ann Peon, and Albert Ratiki, are all people who are on the spectrum in real life. So it's nice that we have people that are actually playing those roles. Obviously the big Sia movie music that came out was just bashed by everybody, partially for having a neurotypical person play a neurodivergent character. And look, I'm all for acting is acting, but I think there are certain roles that probably do need to be played by certain people. Like as a gay person, I don't necessarily care, if somebody is playing gay, or somebody that is gay is playing gay. I've seen plenty of straight actors do really great gay performances, but I think it definitely helps in a case like this, and I think it is partially why a lot of times we don't get really great autistic stories, because they're not really made. They're sort of made with the right heart, but not in the right way, that kind of thing. So I would say the greatest character I've ever seen on the autism spectrum on a television show is, I think his name was Max, but the kid on Parenthood, the Braverman kid. And Jason Katims, who created this, also created Parenthood, and created Friday Night Lights, at least the TV versions. And his son is on the spectrum. So, he made that character of Max basically, for his son, out of love. And so you've got somebody with, a very, very, something that's close to his heart making this story. And then the three lead actors are all as well neurodivergent. So, I think that lends itself to some more authenticity. But we have a lot of, interesting other actors here too. Sosie Bacon, who, speaking of Mayor of Easttown, but that's Kevin Bacon, Keira Sedgwick's daughter. She plays sort of the aide to these people. I don't know if she lives with them or not, but she certainly, takes care of them kind of, and helps them on their journey. And then Joe Mantegna as well plays one of the fathers of the characters. So I thought this was really interesting. I watched the first couple of these, and I think it's an every weeker since it's Amazon. So I think there's maybe 3 of these up. There might be a 4th one now. But I think it is interesting to see somebody with, I think, some authenticity. And you can kind of see that these characters were made from love, and I've seen a couple of interviews with the cast members, and they are, really proud of this movie or this show. And I think they should be. When I compare it to something like Sia's music, which is just such a train wreck and so offensive in every way, I don't think this is necessarily offensive. I'm not sure if everybody on the spectrum is going to see themselves in this, but that's why they call it the spectrum, because it's so diverse. So these are sort of 3 stories in that realm. And I think they seem to ring true. For people that I know. I've worked with a lot of kids that have been on the spectrum, and it makes sense to me. So I think this is made out of love, and I think it will maybe be a positive thing for the autism community. So in terms of the scripting and the comedy, I do think it's funny, but not at the expense of the characters, and I like that. But I do think it's also very real, much like Single Drunk Female. People dealing with real world issues with a little bit of a comedic tone to it. I would probably classify this more as a drama, like I would Single Drunk Female, even though it's just a half hour. I know that screws with the Emmys mindset, but A lot of half-hour shows are better off as dramas. They just are. So I Leave Now, as we see it, rather, with a B plus. All right, so we're going to move on to ABC's Women of the Movement. This has already aired all 6 of its episodes. They aired them, two parts in one night for 3 weeks straight. But it's all available on Hulu, so you can catch up now. This took place at the beginning of the year, but I figured, you know what, we just started Black History Month. Perfect time to watch this. It is about the murder of Emmett Till in the 1950s, and it's let's see, who plays Emmett? Cedric Joe, who is a newcomer, and then Adrienne Warren plays the mother. And most of the people I didn't recognize. Now, Glenn Turman, who I've known for years from his TV work, but he was in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom a couple of years ago. He plays Mamie's uncle, who is basically Emmett's, I guess, great uncle that he gets sort of shipped to work for the summer. And this is when the problem occurs. I'll be honest, I didn't know much about Emmett Till's story, other than when all the stuff was happening like a year and a half ago with Black Lives Matter and stuff. He was one of the people they were saying, say his name kind of thing. And so I knew a little bit about his story, but since it wasn't sort of in the current conscious of a lot of people's minds, I think we focused a little bit on, some of the present day stuff going on and not so much some of the stuff in the past. But I think it's very, very, very important to kind of learn about this stuff. I'm a big believer in, history repeats itself if you don't learn from it and all of that kind of stuff. This kid, Cedric Joe, man, he is great in this. I mean, it's one of the strongest brand new youth performances I've seen in a while. He really sort of captures the time. It's always crazy to me how a kid who wasn't even born, in 2000 yet can so authentically portray somebody, from the 1950s. Not that I lived it either, but, from watching old TV shows and movies from that era, and talking to my grandparents and whatever, I think I have a decent sense, and he just seems to capture the spirit of being a kid in the 50s, in a very, I use the word again, authentic type of way. So I thought that was great. Again, though, I will say I'm not positive that this needed to be 6 hours. I think there is something to be said for the old days of miniseries back when I was growing up. You had, 2 hours on Monday, maybe you'd skip a night, and then the next 2 hours Wednesday, and that was it. That was the show, 4 hours. I'm not saying that there's a lot of filler here, because I don't necessarily think that there is, but I don't think the impact is any greater because it's 6 hours as opposed to 4. But I think we get to know these characters pretty well. I think we are angered, at all of the right things. At least I certainly was. So I can't falter for that. But yeah, real good performances here. I love that ABC has sort of been the champion, really, of sort of the Black Lives Matter movement. Last year they had, I forget the name of it, but it was like a news special, produced by a lot of, like Common and a lot of, legendary Black musicians and actors that always sort of lift up the movement. Sterling K. Brown from This Is Us was a big part of it. I forget what the name of that was, but yeah, ABC sort of been championing this for a couple of years, so I'm not surprised that this is where this show landed. I am a little surprised they released it in January as opposed to February, Black History Month. But in January you do have Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so in my mind, Black History Month sort of starts in the middle of January and sort of goes through February. But in any event, I thought this was a really, really good watch. Maybe a little long in the tooth. But again, I don't think its impact is any greater or less because it's 6 hours. Yeah, overall, I liked this a lot. Women of the Movement gets an A- for me. All right, we close on a lighter note for sure. This is on Nickelodeon. It's a kids show. I've decided to not do the very, very young kid shows anymore with a few exceptions, but shows like this that speak to like tweens, people my nephew's age who is 10, sure, I'll take a look at that. I love a good kids comedy on Nickelodeon or Disney Channel. This one is called Warped. It's about these kids who work at a comic book store, sort of, geek archive type of store, memorabilia and that kind of thing. And Milo is the lead here, Anton Starkman, and they hire this new gal, Ruby, played by Kate Godfrey, and she just, upends everything with her appearance. Now, I have seen a few of these Nickelodeon shows that I've graded very poorly because they were sort of mining their actors from TikTok and stuff like that. Influencers, that girl Lele and Young Dylan are the two that come to mind immediately. But this show has a lot of alums from the All That reboot and from a couple of other Disney Channel shows. So I could totally appreciate that. And even the creators, Kevin Kopelau and Heath Seifert, they created a bunch of shows on Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel. In fact, they were, or at least one of them was on the original All That back in the 90s. So I love when Nickelodeon sort of, gets people from being kids all the way through, and then they let them do shows and stuff. And a lot of times they turn out really well. This ends up somewhere in the middle. I wasn't in love with this show. For one thing, I don't know how old these kids are in real life. I actually looked it up on IMDb, but neither one of the leads had their info up there. But I would place them at about 13 or 14 maybe. So why are they essentially running this store? I don't know. I didn't quite get that. There is, a man that's running it, but of course he's a dum-dum because he's an adult on a Nickelodeon show. But like, I don't understand why these children are running this store. So that sort of seemed a little bit off-putting. But, it's typical Nickelodeon type stuff, a lot of physical comedy, a lot of pratfalls. But because these people came up in other Nickelodeon shows, they know how to deliver a punchline. They know how to speak to the camera, speak to the audience. So I thought this was cute, not among maybe the best of the shows. And really the whole plot didn't really make any sense of the first episode. There were these, boots that were from some movie, and they were like the authentic boots, and none of it made really a lot of sense to me. But it's sort of like a precursor, I guess, to Big Bang Theory, maybe, except in this case, all the kids are, nerds, so to speak, including the girls. But I guess, for fans of Big Bang Theory, yeah, this sort of makes sense in that kind of wheelhouse. It was okay overall. I'm going to leave Warped with a C+. All right, we don't dwell too long on the kid shows, I know, but I want to put them out there anyway. But that's going to do it. So, we have... Boy, I'm a little bit behind. I know there's a lot of shows that have premiered already that I have not gotten to. One that I'm very curious about is this Josh Gad one. I think Isla Fisher maybe is the female counterpart of that. It's called Wolf Like Me. That's on Peacock. Definitely want to talk about that. And I think there was a show that just came up on Netflix. Oh, the Kristen Bell one, The Woman in the Window Across from the Girl in the Window or something like that. I don't know. It's like a parody series of those sort of crazy kind of stalker movies or whatever. So that looks kind of funny. But yeah, I'll get to all of that in the next couple of weeks. We'll have news for you next week as well. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see everybody next time. Bye.